Welcome to the Historical Mind. How does a king become one of the wealthiest men on the planet? How does a territory 76 times the size of its owner's country become a personal slave state? And how does it all happen in plain sight, praised by the world as a great humanitarian project? In today's episode, we answer these questions by exploring the terrible reign of King Leopold II of Belgium. It's a story of greed, masterful deception, and a human rights catastrophe that the world chose to ignore for far too long. Let's get into it. Red rubber, black heart, the terrible reign of King Leopold in the Grand. Gilded halls of European monarchy, kings are often remembered for their wars, their grand constructions, or the dynastic lines they secured. Their legacies are cast in stone and bronze, their portraits hung in national galleries. But some are remembered for the darkness they unleashed upon the world, a darkness so profound it stains the pages of history. Among the most monstrous, yet for decades tragically overlooked, is King Leopold of Belgium, a monarch who did not spill blood on the battlefield, but orchestrated a cold, calculated genocide from thousands of miles away, all under the shimmering guise of philanthropy. His kingdom was not in Europe. It was a personal empire of horror carved out of the heart of Africa, a vast abattoir built on greed. A king's insatiable thirst for a colony born in 1835, Leopold was a man of immense ambition and deep-seated insecurities. He ascended to the Belgian throne in 1865, inheriting a small, relatively new country dwarfed by the sprawling empires of Great Britain, France, and Germany. This perceived smallness gnawed at him. He was consumed by a singular, burning obsession: acquiring a colony. Belgium is a small country with small people, he lamented. For Leopold, a colony was not a national project, but a personal one, a private venture that would elevate him above other monarchs. This intense personal ambition, rooted in insecurity, fueled his masterful deception on the world stage. He was determined to get his piece of what he called the magnificent African cake. His early efforts were a series of frustrating failures. He schemed to buy the Philippines from Spain, purchase parts of Argentina, and even establish a foothold in China. Each plan collapsed. Then his gaze fell upon the vast, largely unmapped Congo River basin, a territory of immense potential, shrouded in mystery. Here, he saw his chance. Leopold was a master of public relations and political theatre. In 1876, he convened a grand geographical conference in Brussels, inviting renowned explorers and dignitaries from across Europe. He cloaked his colonial ambitions in the noble language of science and humanitarianism, speaking passionately of a moral duty to bring civilization to Africa and to stamp out the horrific Arab slave trade in the region. He formed the International African Association, a supposedly international philanthropic body. It was a brilliant, deceptive performance. The world saw a benevolent, progressive king. What they didn't see was the machination of a predator. Under the cover of the association, Leopold hired the famed Welsh-American explorer Henry Morton Stanley. Fresh from his celebrated expedition to find Dr. Livingstone, Stanley was tasked with plunging into the Congo's interior. His mission was not one of science but of acquisition. Over several years, Stanley's expeditions coerced and tricked hundreds of local chiefs into signing treaties. He presented them with documents filled with legal jargon they could not read, offering trinkets, gin, and bolts of cloth in exchange for an X mark. The chiefs, for whom the European concept of selling land was entirely alien, believed they were entering into friendly trading arrangements, not surrendering their sovereignty forever. With these treaties in hand, Leopold outmaneuvered the great powers of Europe and the United States at the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885. He played his rivals against each other, promising free trade for all nations within the Congo Basin. He convinced them that a territory under the stewardship of a small, neutral country's king was preferable to it falling into the hands of a major rival. They agreed, and in a stunning diplomatic coup, recognized Leopold's personal sovereignty over the new Congo Free State. It was not a Belgian colony accountable to a parliament. It was his personal property, an estate 76 times the size of Belgium, and he was its absolute ruler. The rubber terror Leopold's humanitarian promises were a lie woven to conceal a rapacious greed. His true goal was to extract as much wealth as possible, as quickly as possible. The initial prize was ivory, but the invention of the pneumatic tire by John Dunlop in 1888 created a massive, insatiable global demand for rubber. The Congo was rich with wild rubber vines, and Leopold had just become the world's rubber baron. To exploit this resource, he instituted a reign of terror of almost unimaginable cruelty. The entire Congolese population was effectively enslaved. A series of decrees declared all vacant land to be the property of the state estate. This included all forests and jungles, meaning the Congolese people could no longer hunt, fish, or gather resources without permission. They were forced to work for Leopold's profit. Men were sent deep into the dangerous jungle to harvest rubber sap. Each village was given an impossibly high quota. Failure to meet this quota was met with swift and unimaginable brutality. Leopold's private army, the Force Publique, was the instrument of this terror, comprised of Belgian officers and African soldiers, many of whom were kidnapped as children, orphaned by state-sponsored raids, and raised to be merciless enforcers. Crucially, its agents often recruited soldiers from one ethnic group to terrorize another, exploiting existing rivalries to ensure the enforcers had little sympathy for their victims. This divide-and-conquer strategy was key to how such a small force could dominate millions. Failure to meet the rubber quota was a death sentence. The Force Publique would descend upon a village not merely to punish, but to annihilate burning huts, slaughtering inhabitants, and making a terrifying example for all others to see. To ensure that the soldiers were not wasting their precious bullets on hunting, their officers demanded proof of every execution. The soldiers were ordered to bring back the severed right hand of every person they killed. This gruesome policy led to one of the most infamous and nightmarish symbols of Leopold's reign: baskets full of severed hands delivered to white officials. This system created its own perverse economy of horror. If a soldier used a bullet to hunt an animal, or even missed his human target, he would often cut off the hand of a living person, a man, woman, or child, to present to his officer. Villages that resisted were wiped out. Men were worked to death in the forests, while their wives and children were held hostage in concentration camps, starved, and abused to coerce the men to gather ever more rubber. This was the era of red. Rubber, red for the blood of the Congolese people. A genocide for a fifth scale of the carnage was apocalyptic. While exact figures are impossible to verify due to Leopold's systematic destruction of records, just before he lost control of the territory, historians estimate that the population of the Congo was reduced by as much as 50% during his rule. The death toll is estimated to be between 5 and 15 million people. This was not a war. It was a demographic catastrophe driven by pure greed. People died from summary executions, from exhaustion, from disease that spread like wildfire through the brutal labor camps, and from starvation as the traditional agricultural way of life was completely destroyed. All the while, Leopold became one of the richest men in the world. The profits from the rubber trade funded lavish public works in Belgium, grand avenues, parks, museums, and royal palaces that earned him the nickname the Builder King at home. The Belgian people were largely unaware that the grandeur of Brussels and Ostend was being built on a mountain of Congolese skulls and financed by a river of blood. The story of Leopold's Congo is not just one of a villain, but also of the heroes who fought to expose him, journalists, missionaries, and whistleblowers who sparked one of the world's first great human rights campaigns. Their bravery shows that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, individuals have the power to bring truth to light. What do you think? Was this a story you were taught in school? Let's start a conversation in the comments if you appreciate these stories being brought out of the shadows. Please support the channel by liking this video and subscribing to History Hub. Thanks for being part of our community. We'll see you next time.